Hi, this is Dennis Dempsey. You are listening to the Faith in Humanity podcast. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Faith in Humanity podcast. I hope you all are doing well. I myself have been better. I'm finishing up the school semester, so I am quite focused on getting in my assignments, my essays, and studying for finals, so that's been consuming a lot of my mental energy. Also, I'm in the process of moving, and if any of you guys have moved before, it is always a headache. Nothing ever seems to go smoothly, and I've been on the phone multiple times with different utility companies, internet companies, renters insurance companies, and just when you think everything's okay, something screwed up and you have to get back on the phone, and it's just such a headache. So hopefully in the next 2 weeks I'll be in the clear from all that, and I'll hopefully be able to get on more of a routine schedule of releasing episodes. At least that's the goal, because I personally do not like this big gap in time between episodes, but my life circumstances kind of got in the way. So I apologize for that, and I'm going to try and get better. I think that this episode was well worth the wait. I sat down and spoke with Steve Judd, a professional astrologist with over 35 years of experience. And see, when I started off this podcast, I kind of had this vision of talking to the average person, someone that may, not a priest or a rabbi or imam or anything like that. I really want to talk to just someone who's just following a belief system, hear their stories, how they got to where they are and why they believe what they believe, and really try to learn about all the different beautiful beliefs and views of spirituality out there and views of the divine. But when I get someone like Steve, and Steve is a perfect example of it, someone who has really, I would say mastered his craft. He would probably say he hasn't mastered his craft. He would probably say that, there's so much more that he can learn, and it's never ending. You can never say that you fully understand something. But someone who has like a firm grasp on what they believe and really have done the legwork, done the research, gone out there, has the experiences. He has such a depth of knowledge that it is unbelievable. Talking with him, I could pick his brain for hours, to be honest. And his depth of knowledge, coupled with the fact that he's incredibly articulate and is able to explain things thoroughly and simply so an idiot like me can understand, it's phenomenal. You can't ask for something better than that. So right before I got onto the Skype call with Steve, I was actually just got off the phone with an insurance company. So I was kind of frazzled. My mind was kind of all over the place. I was thinking about the next step, what I have to do next, and I was really trying to focus in to have this good conversation. And you can almost hear it in my voice. And even when I listen back to the episode, I sound kind of defeated or deflated, like, oh man, kind of stressed out. And something that's great about Steve, so on top of the wealth of knowledge and how he's able to articulate everything, he also has this great joy about him. When we spoke at first, I was like, wow, this guy he's just fun to talk to. He's just like an absolutely fun person. And he just pulled me up. And I'm going to guess that you can hear it throughout the interview, because I could hear it. And I know for myself that it pulled me up. And you know what? It's not only this joyous personality that he has, but it's a very calming personality at the same time, which is like kind of a really unique, I feel like a unique combination where I felt more alive, but also felt calmer while talking to him. So it was just all around fantastic. I cannot thank Steve enough. It was an absolute pleasure to speak with him. He's an absolutely fantastic guy, and I'm going to link everything, all of his stuff in the show notes and on our social media, and I'm about to get to our social media, where you can find us on social media in a second. But for right now, I just want to tell you where you can find Steve. And Steve's going to tell you at the end of the episode too. On YouTube, you can find him at Steve Judd Astrology. You can also email him at steve@stevejudd.com, and his website is stevejudd.com. So go on there and make sure to watch some of his videos, read some of the stuff on his website. I promise you, you will benefit from it. So before we get into the episode, let's just get the announcements kind of out of the way. You can follow us on Twitter at TFIH_podcast. You can find us on Facebook by searching the name The Faith in Humanity Podcast. You can find us on YouTube under the same name, The Faith in Humanity Podcast. And you can email us at tfih.podcast@gmail.com. We love to hear from you guys. Some of you guys send us in feedback, and I really appreciate that. Even if it's something very simple, can make the podcast better. We'd love to hear all the feedback you have. Also, right now I kind of search for people on YouTube, on forums, kind of how I pull my guests and everything. But if you are someone out there that wants to talk about your faith, that you have beliefs that you would like to share, please contact me. I would love to speak with you. All the interviews are absolutely open-minded, respectful. It's really not a place to combat and fight. It's just a place to give people a platform. I really want to try to get in the mindset of the person and why they believe what they believe, and try to fully understand, to broaden my horizons. I mean, the only time that I think that I would ever really have a pushback is if someone said something absolutely egregious. That was like, whoa, like that is not okay. But other than that, all faiths are welcome. All people types, all stories are welcome. And, I'll even work with you. There was a couple of people that they didn't want their name out there, so we went with a different name and everything, so that's not a problem. If you want to keep yourself anonymous, that's fine. And one last thing before we start the show, if you could go onto iTunes, Stitcher, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts and just give us a rating, preferably a good rating, that would help us a lot and help other people to find our podcast. All right, hope you all enjoy the show. Today I'm speaking with Steve Judd, a professional astrologist with over 35 years of experience, which is incredibly impressive. Steve, thanks a lot for sitting down and speaking with me today. I was introduced to your channel a couple of years back, just really fast. It was kind of interesting because I watched the video that you did about Donald Trump. It was right before the election, and I thought you were a little bit nuts because at that time I thought that Donald Trump was going to win. Going to lose for sure. I thought Hillary Clinton was a definite win, and you made a prediction, reluctantly, painfully made the prediction that everything was looking good for Donald Trump, and sure enough, Donald Trump won, which was absolutely incredible. So I started really watching your videos and started being more exposed to astrology because I grew up in a very fundamentally Christian family, so astrology was of the devil. Like, that's something that you do not deal with. So I started, watching some of your videos, learning more about astrology. I was really surprised to see how benign, but just it really changed my perception of astrology. So we're going to get into that a little bit because I have a very different perception about it, and I'm going to guess that a lot of people out there have wrong misconceptions about astrology. So let's lay down a little bit of a groundwork, a little bit of a foundation. How did you get involved in astrology, and what drew you to astrology? What about astrology made you want to dedicate over half your life to the practice of it?
It was about I joined the army when I was 15, and after I crashed a few tanks, they realised I wasn't very good at the sort of weapons end of things. So they ran a set of intelligence tests on me when I was about 16, 17, and found out I was really good at working with codes and symbols and ciphers. So they put me into coding and decoding. I eventually left the army under a little bit of a cloud when I was 20, just 20. And then I dropped out for a year, and during that time I found my first astrology book. I didn't think that much of it, to be honest, but I picked it up and I looked it up. I thought, this is interesting. Symbols, codes. But then someone showed me, the mother of my daughter showed me how it really worked around about 1979, 1980. And whilst I've been actually reading about it since 1976, I've only been studying it properly since 1979. And I realised that it's just a section of codes and symbols that translates as pattern recognition. And that pattern recognition is pretty good when it comes to describing certain types of human behaviour. It's psychology by another name. So from 1980, I started building horoscopes. I got the first 30 or 40 wrong because I didn't know about time zones. So around about 1981, I started doing horoscopes properly. And around 1985, I started asking for donations in return for it. And then since 2000, doing readings for individuals has been my only source of income. And that's where I am now. I've been doing it now. I've been studying it 41 years. I've been practicing it 7 years. And I've been doing it for a full-time living for nearly 20 years.
Wow. Okay. And did you have like a formal education in that? Is there a way to get a formal education? Do they offer some sort of degrees in astrology?
These days, there's a number of different schools you can go to get various astrological qualifications. When I started, no, there was nothing. So in 2003, I went to Spa University College in England, where they were doing the first university degree, and I graduated in 2005 with my master's degree in cultural astronomy and astrology, and I was the 13th person in the world to do that. There's now a couple of hundred. There's even a few PhDs now, but they're not doctors of astrology. They're doctors of applied cosmology. This is the first time that astrology has been in the university since 1600, when the last professor of university was burnt at the stake in the University of Bologna in Italy.
Wow. Okay, so we've advanced a lot since then.
Well, the Inquisition is still alive and kicking, I assure you, in certain segments of fundamentalism, regardless of what type of religion. And there are certain people around the world who would happily still burn astrologers if they could.
And this kind of this leads us into our first misconception, the first stereotype, because before watching your videos and kind of doing my own research, I had this perception that it was at the same level as tarot card readings and palm readings and such like that, which seems a little bit more mystical than what you're describing. But the way that you describe astrology, it almost sounds like it sounds like a science. And when I watch your videos, it seems like there's a lot of science that goes behind it. It seems that the world is recognizing that more. So if you could, maybe what is astrology exactly, and how does it differ from maybe those other practices? Not that there's anything intrinsically wrong with tarot card readings or palm readings or anything like that. Astrology, at least astrology, is grounded more in objective truth and science than those other practices.
Of all the different divinatory art forms, all of them, with the exception of possibly two, rely purely and solely on the intuition of the reader. The two that don't, one possibly is numerology, which there is evidence that numerology goes back thousands of years, whereas the earliest tarot card readings were only being done around 1400, 1450. And astrology, which goes back, the earliest records of astrology written records go back to about 4500 BC, but there's evidence of people using the stars in divination back to about 65, 70,000 years ago, with cave paintings in France pointing to the Pleiades and things like this. The difference between astrology and all of the other forms of divinatory arts is that all the others just use intuition, whereas astrology is a genuine blend of mathematics, geometry, symbology, psychology, and intuition. And without a knowledge of all of them, you can't do astrology. So it's a true mix of art and science.
Yeah, because I think that a lot of people, and myself included in this, is that, I had the idea that that you're predicting the future for someone, but it's not that. It's more like these these bodies, these celestial bodies, are having this real world effect on you. So if you're planning on doing X, Y, and Z, you should avoid doing that because you're going to be affected this way. Is that kind of?
Well, for example, when I'm doing a reading for a client, it's easy to look back into their past and pull out times and events from the past. And it's also easy to give an objective, detached perspective on where they are now based on the planets in the sky and what they're doing to their individual horoscope. But anybody who says that they can predict the future is an idiot, a fool, or genuinely psychic, and there's very few of them around. An astrologist should never predict the future. Anyone who predicts the future, I line them up against the wall. That doesn't work.
Burn them at the stake.
You can give the client timings and areas, but what they do with that is up to them. I'm a great believer in free will. I have no truck whatsoever in fate or destiny. I don't believe in it. Nothing is written in stone.
That's interesting. Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. If the things written in the stars were, exactly what's going to happen, or if you believed in free will. So it's kind of good that you do.
Well, there's an old saying here that says that the planets impel, they don't compel. And the logical, one of the chief skeptical arguments here is, how can these planets billions of miles away affect individuals? And I can actually prove that. It's easy to demonstrate how the moon affects people. That's easy. Any sensible surgeon doesn't operate on a full moon. Police officers will tell you that their jails are full. Excuse me just a second, just get rid of that. They will tell you that their police station cells are full on a full moon.
Yeah.
So it's easy to say how the full moon works. Other planets that are a lot further away, well, you can hear them on the radio. You can hear Jupiter, for example, on a shortwave radio. Its electrical radio signals hit the Earth regularly every 13 seconds. And if they're hitting the Earth, they're hitting us. When it comes to planets like Pluto that are 4 billion miles away and smaller than our moon, now then you get the scientists then start going, well, how can this be? I have tens of thousands of statistics from clients who say, yes, it really does work. But I've struggled to find an acceptable scientific explanation as to how it works. There is a way of describing how it works, but it involves using quantum. The idea of particle and wave theory. It's like the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. It gets messy when you try and explain it. And I'm not really going to go into that too deeply now, except to say that I can provide tens of thousands of statistics to show that these planets do work. They don't order you, they don't make you do things, but they create energy fields which, if you react positively to them, can be of great benefits to your life.
When you say positive to them, you mean like acting in accordance to the way that you're to those energy waves. Some of them are negative, right? Correct? Some of them can affect you negatively?
Well, certain patterns come across as very challenging. And sometimes when I see, for example, if I see in a client's chart that there's a really difficult blend of two challenging planets, for example, Mars and Saturn, and a full moon, and it's really hitting their horoscope in a very challenging way over a period of, say, a few days, I'll say to them, stay low. Don't hide under the bed, because the bed will just collapse on top of you. So get out there and use your energy, but use it by digging the garden or walking the dog, because if you don't use it, then it will use you. And that's when you get things like bumps, bangs, bruises, broken bones, confrontations or arguments. Yeah. So it's about constructive use of energy as opposed to allowing energy to use you in a more challenging or negative way.
Got it. Okay, I understand. And you guys still use Pluto as a planet, right? Even though this
Absolutely.
Okay. So you'd be against the scientists that say Pluto's no longer a planet.
Up until the invention of the telescope, astronomy and astrology were one and the same thing. Right? It's only since the telescope was invented and used, and it's only since the Age of Reason, since about 1770, that the two have differentiated. Astronomy is the study of the movements of the planets and stars in the heavens. Astrology is the study of the effects of those movements.
Got it. So they really go hand in hand. We're like almost perfect. Yeah.
And I consider myself almost as much an astronomer as I do an astrologer, because I love it when I can go out there with a bunch of students and point to various planets in the sky against certain stars in the background and go, there's Aries, there's Scorpio, that's Jupiter, and you can see that angle there and you can see the pattern it's making, and it's real. When you see it with your eyes, it's real. It's not just on a computer screen, and it brings it to life.
Yeah.
And that's how people can really identify with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's great that you can bring them out there. I mean, I find it challenging to go out, find some place to actually look at the stars and look at the sky because of so much of the light pollution around cities now and everything. And I wonder, because you said that astrology, they say that it began about 6,500 to 7,000 years ago. That's kind of where you can date it back to. And now, I mean, then they were so in tune to everything going on, everything that was happening around them. Now it seems like we have, I don't want to say lost the ability, but it's become more and more difficult with the modern age to be able to look up the stars and feel the effect, or even recognize the effects. What was the process of them figuring out, this.
When people say to me, when did astrology actually start? And I suggest it started about 1.5 million years ago on an East Kenyan safari plain, when some hominid got off its knuckles and stood up straight for the first time, and then at night time it looked up and it went, oh wow, look at that. And then over the next 100,000 years or so, they would have seen one or two of those lights moving against the backdrop of the stars. They wouldn't have known that they were planets. They didn't have that type of intelligence. So they would have made at first this myth and legend, which is the origin of astrology. Now, there seems to be a time around 12,600 years ago, plus minus a couple of hundred years, where in every culture around the world, Aztec, Polynesian, Zimbabwean, Hindu, Icelandic, Norwegian, European, throughout different cultures, there's a story that around 10,500 to 10,600 BC, there was a massive flood. It's in every ancient book.
Yeah, across all cultures, yes.
And I believe that flood devastated the human race at that time. And those survivors, those few survivors, it was such a trauma that they switched from right brain, empathic, intuitive, compassionate community to left brain, solo, individual, self-determined, which is where we are now. Yeah. Now, there's a woman friend of mine called Serena Roney Dougal, who's got the world's first PhD in parapsychology, and she suggests that if you take a bacteria and introduce a host, or if you take a molecule and introduce loads of atoms, or if you take a planet and introduce a big virus, then whatever the host body, once an invading virus reaches a certain number, then mutation occurs. And that number is 10 to the power of 10, or 10 billion. Humanity is now at the power of about 10 to 9.7, as in 7 billion, and it will hit 10 billion within my lifetime, at which point I believe that some type of mutation is going to occur, some type of accelerated mutation, which is going to really expand consciousness. Instead of going back to being right-brained, there's going to be a kind of lobal sharing. We're still going to retain our identity, individuality, and our own belief systems, but we're also going to become a hell of a lot more intuitive, sensitive, and receptive, both to each other's vibration and to the environment. Maybe I'm just a hippie on this one, I don't know. It's a nice dream.
Yeah, I mean, there are people, I don't know if you're aware of a guy named Graham Hancock who believes in ancient civilization.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
and he kind of talks about how we peak at an age of reason, then we go into a low, and now we're kind of moving our way back up to an age of reason. And that could potentially be a peak of it with what you're saying about maybe if we get to a new level of consciousness in the next couple of decades, which would be hopefully it should be hopefully I would like to see a new age of reasoning, but right now it seems like we're in a dark times where people are kind of brutalistic to each other. Just it would be nice to see it.
Yeah, this is a natural reaction. I mean, when I was a kid, spirituality meant going to church and Sunday school. There were 2 billion people on planet when I was born. There's now 7. When I was a kid, spirituality was Sunday school. Now there's pick and mix philosophies, every type of religion and theology out there. When I was a kid, new technology meant a little black wooden box with a black and white moving screen, first televisions. Now, of course, well, look, we're chatting across the world via satellite download.
Yeah.
Technology, spirituality, and population are escalating. They're not on a straight line curve, they're on an accelerating graph curve. And once that reaches prime vertical, we'll either collapse back in and go the other way, as perhaps happened 12,000 years ago, or we'll go beyond the graph into an enhanced consciousness. And astrology fits with this as a really good metaphor for the time schedule. And I believe I can put a sort of schedule on this. I think we are rapidly approaching that prime vertical point. And I expect that I'm now 60, how old am I? Christ. I'm 62, I'm 63, and I believe that before I'm 80, we will see this moment of transcendence.
Well, okay, so you're saying that these things moving together, almost together, because in my mind I'm thinking that with the rise of technology and modernization of the world, that people have this idea that spiritual practices and even astrology, looking up the stars, having kind of this spiritual communication with nature, celestial bodies, people say that it's on the downfall, that we're losing that. But you're saying that with it's all moving together.
This is the difference. Well, on one side, the future of technology is very much moving into the nanotech, the cyber tech, and I can certainly conceive of a future where in 20, 30 years' time the environment is so toxic, but the only future is the kind of downloading of consciousness into some type of AI construct, which will then facilitate space travel a lot easier. Great. But then where's the spirit? The other side of the same coin says that we're gaining a much greater symbiosis with the environment, nature, spirituality, and the more, how can I put it, different dimensional realms, let's put it that way. I don't see a dichotomy here. I think that the softer the technology becomes, the more it kind of blends in with the spiritual acceleration that's going on. And I do believe that there is some type of interface possible here. I'm certainly working towards it.
Got it. Okay, wow. And so astrology can be adopted into any faith practice, right? I mean, it's really not independent of any faith. It's not like one or the other. It can be adopted, because I know that if you look at the ancient Middle East, ancient religion of Zoroastrianism, which was huge in the Middle East, they were big into astrology, correct? Yeah.
The earliest academically acceptable evidence of astrology comes from the Sumerian culture around 4600 BC, where you'll find, although we can't translate the alphabet, we've got a couple of copper scrolls, one in the Rijksmuseum, one in the British Museum, of the king being crowned, whilst at the same time the priests are pointing to the constellation of stars over his head at the moment that he's crowned. So This is astrology by another name.
Yeah. And
that gave rise to the Babylonian, the Chaldean, and then it jumped from the Mesopotamian area to Egypt, then to Crete, Greece, Rome, Britain, America. Astrology always survives. As cultures clash, as cultures collapse and civilizations go down, astrology survives and it jumps. It's got a history of surviving in different cultures.
That's really interesting that you say that, because I watch some atheists, and they always say that, like, hey, if we wiped out, I think it was Ricky Gervais said this on some talk show, where he said that if you wipe out all the spiritual books and then they were like kind of rewritten, you'd get something different. But if you wipe out all the scientific books and rewrote them, you'd get the same thing, with science is objectively true. And you're saying that with the rise and fall, astrology is just like science, where it prevails, where it's kind of this like constant.
Yes.
Yeah, which is fascinating, which gives it credence to its validity, because it makes it where it's not constantly changing, or you're getting totally different things. Although I suppose that with astrology, it didn't really originate in a specific place, right? It was like different, because I know the Mayans kind of started doing some discovery, the Middle East started doing some discovery. Were they different, or were they getting to the same general...
That's one of the great questions of civilization, because astrology has its roots in the Middle East, it has its roots in the Indus Valley, in the Ganges Valley in India, it has its roots in China, there's this African and South American astrology, and they all sort of come up around the same time, or around the time that those civilizations start interacting with others. Then it seemed they had their own version of astrology. So did it all stem from one original study? That's the same question as, did all humans come from one original source? We don't know, because it's lost in the mists of time. But my guess is that there's always been an understanding. For over tens of thousands of years, we've been able to look, for example, at Mars, and we've been able to see Mars in the sky and see that it's red. Thus, it's got its connections with iron, with blood, with warfare. We've always seen Jupiter as the biggest planet in the sky. It's bigger than all the others put together. So Jupiter's always been associated with growth and expansion.
Got it.
So these basic meanings go through every different stream and branch of astrology.
Got it. Okay. And as astrology, as like almost a scientific discipline, is it ever expanding, kind of like where every other branch of science, as we make new discoveries and everything, things...
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
For example, in 1978, a planetoid called Chiron was discovered in between Saturn and Uranus, in between the visible inner planet and the invisible outer planet. And it was at that time that the holistic revolution started. Pre-78, no one was talking about homeopathy, astrology, aromatherapy, anything like that. Post-78, it's now a part of the language. Similarly, when Pluto was discovered in 1930, no one had heard of psychology or the underworld or anything like that. Post-1930, it is common. As planets are discovered and their archetypes become defined, so their message moves into the group consciousness. It seems to be a symbiotic development. It seems to be almost causal as it happens.
Wow, okay. So, as I'm learning more, I think that you may be on the wrong podcast. You should be on the Science and Humanity podcast, not the Faith, because it seems like it's very structured in these very firm beliefs, which is
beliefs limit. If you believe something strong enough, then anything outside that belief can't be true. And some of my most interesting arguments and debates over the years have been with priests, predominantly from the Catholic religion, but not exclusively. And when I'm able to point out a large amount of astrology in the Bible, for example, because there's lots of it in there, I consider myself, I have an excellent relationship with the divine, with divinity. However you choose to label it. Some people call the divine Allah, God, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad. I call it the upstairs department. Call it what you like. But divinity and spirituality is a live motive force in this world. And without it, we'd just be robots. I have a great relationship with spirit. And astrology is imbued with spirituality. It's alive.
Yeah, it's almost like I almost see it as a form of worship in a weird way. It's almost like you're devoting your life to discovering the way that the world is, the way the universe is, and it's almost like a sign of respect and worship to that, to saying like, hey, this is incredible, and I'm devoting my life to it.
Yes, but I wouldn't respect certainly.
Okay.
Worship possibly, although I would not describe it quite like that, because worship implies that you believe in everything about it, and I don't. This is going to take a bit of comprehension for your listeners. This is really going to throw them, but I don't believe in astrology, because belief means that you have to get your brain around it and organize your brain into certain patterns so that you believe something. I know astrology works. I don't need to believe it. I know it. That's why you get a lot of really devout religious people who they say, I know God. At which point I go, yeah, great. They don't have to believe, they know. And that's the same with astrology for me. For decades I've described astrology as an it. And then one day I realised that it's not an it, because an it is sterile. Astrology is alive. And when I realised that, I started calling it a she. Okay, at which point my whole life changed. My whole attitude towards death, for example, completely changed. I don't believe in death. I just do transition of consciousness.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's, I talked to a Buddhist monk, and it was the same idea. He kind of said, I was going to ask about astrology if they talk about death. I guess they don't really have a belief after there's not one firm, kind of like, with most practices of belief and everything, there is like a standard of what happens after death. But the Buddhist monk was kind of like, it's just another moment. Just another moment. And that's all that it is. Whether your consciousness just goes around with, it's like the idea that this consciousness just dies and you just no longer exist for me, it goes against, really what everything points to, in my opinion. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that when you die, you just kind of cease everything, all that you are. Yeah. So astrologists, there's no like fundamental afterlife kind of belief that
there's no such thing as death. There is eternal life, but it's just in different shapes and forms, different dimensions of consciousness, different experiences.
Got it.
When I'm dealing with people who are getting ready for the end of life, for example, as I have done, then I talk to them. I sit down and I talk to them. I say, look, where you're going, you're going to find that when you get there, your ex-partner or your friends or your pets, they're going to be there waiting for you, and they're going to be waiting in a place where there is no time. So no time is going to pass for them. They'll just be waiting for you, and as soon as you get there, they're going to say, come on, we've got the party ready. Okay? Because it's like, what I've worked out using astrology is that in astrology, there's a little point in the horoscope called the North Node. And this is a development that comes from the Hindu astrology. It was brought over to Europe in the 1890s by Madame Blavatsky and a Theosophical Society. And with it, they brought the Hindu translation of this as around karma and reincarnation. But this came from a culture which was so abject in poverty, but the only thing that certain people could aspire to was to be good this life so that they stood a chance of a better life next time. Now, I live in the West, where I'm not interested in next life. I want it all now. So instead of looking at karma and reincarnation, I look at it in terms of mission statement, purpose, and why you volunteered to come to planet Earth in the first place, why you chose to be here. And that's what the horoscope can do. It can make you aware of your true potentials and gifts, and it can give you an edge to make you far more effective and efficient than you would normally be. And thus a much better human being, able to help so many more other people, either collectively or individually, which in turn perpetuates other people helping others and makes the world a better place. Sounds simple. It isn't.
No, and it's like the Dharma. It's like Dharma in Hinduism, where you kind of figure out why you're here, or like what your purpose is here, and then that kind of is a way. Well, you're supposed to try to break this cycle of reincarnation, is what they believe. But you use interesting word, volunteer. So we're kind of this. So you kind of have this idea that we are these spirits, and then we volunteer to come and exist in this world, and we have to figure out what our purpose is or why we decide to come down here, and the purpose of that is to enhance ourselves in the afterlife. What's the purpose of coming down?
It's to improve our souls, yes, but it's also to change the energy vibe, to change the energy vibration of this planet, and to raise it. Because I don't do ET or Alien or any nonsense like that. There's no little green men out there. That's just a sort of another form of literal terrorism designed to keep us down. There's no such thing as aliens, apart from on planet Earth, where a lot of people are alienated, but that's a different story. Instead, it's just different dimensions, and the Earth is trying to raise itself up to a greater dimension where we can join into a much more universal community that's out there and waiting for us. We've just got to raise the vibration of the planet. And humans are in the best position to do that at this time.
Okay. So we're all supposed to be working together to be raising, or maybe individually, but then we work together collectively. Like if each person is pursuing their purpose or the reason why they came down, then we'll all be working together collectively for this purpose and goal.
The only problem is if you start getting groups of people doing this, then they inevitably get trodden on by people with vested interests in keeping the vibe down. So there's a philosophy that says that the world can be changed one person at a time, one day at a time, little steps. And that's the way it works, I think, in my opinion.
So there's no, you would never say that there's a set of morals in astrology and in your beliefs, but it seems like there's obviously, I'm sure that you would say there's universal morals in the sense that treating everybody with respect and dignity and all that, the golden rule, so to speak, from the Bible. It's
ethics and morals is a very contentious subject. I think I only have two rules. One is a personal one, and that is, I always want to be able to say that I've got a good and clean conscience, because that's important to me. That's a personal thing. And the other thing is, my tag, which I've always used, I've used it for 40 years, and I always will use it, is what I want on my epitaph: negativity can't exist where there's humour. Okay? So smile and laugh, and the world becomes a better place. You smile at someone, they smile back at you.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and there's a question that I always ask at the end of talking to people, which is like, what is one thing they can take from their spiritual practice? Which I'll probably ask you. I will ask you at the end of this. But what's one thing that from their personal beliefs, or maybe the belief system that we're specifically talking about, that they would say someone could adopt into their lives right now to see benefits? And actually, a Muslim woman that I spoke to, she said smile more. She said just smile more and everything. And I thought, I was like, wow, that's really beautiful. And you're kind of you'd agree with that, just smile more.
Humor works, and also simple works. There's a philosophy that says that if you always tell the truth, you never have to remember what you said, right? And that simplicity works. Complicated doesn't work. Simple works.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of research into Zoroastrianism, and that's kind of why I was talked about it before. And they have their mantra being good words, good thoughts, good deeds, or something in that order, which is just very simple, but it's beautiful, and it works. Just if you keep it simple, stupid. It's very simple positivity. I can agree with that, and I think that we need more of that. And I think that's one of the reasons why formal religions or traditional forms of religion like Christianity, Judaism, and things of that nature, I've always had a hard time with it, because I always thought that it was bogged down by bureaucracy and just all this.
Most religions have this attitude that if you're one of us, you're one of us, and if you're not, you're going to hell.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether it's Hindus looking down on the Daljits, whether it's Catholics looking down on the Protestants, or Muslims looking down on other people. It doesn't matter, as long as, religions seem to divide people. The origin of the word religion comes from the Latin, religare, and it's the same root as the word ligament, which binds muscle to bone. So religion, religare, means to bind down, to tie down, to limit. And if you believe anything strong enough, then anything outside that belief can't be true. And I have particular difficulty with the religious, particularly the Catholic notion of hell, Hades. It doesn't exist. That is people's own conscience and their own makeup, their own fear of what is going to happen to them when they die because of what they have done or failed to do in their life.
Yeah, so you believe in there's really no hell or heaven. It's just kind of you just exist. After when we're talking about that, yeah, it's just kind of you just exist. And this.
But obviously, the more ethically and cleanly you live your life, the higher your vibration, and the more you can aspire almost to some type of divine status within oneself. Whereas the lower you aspire, the more impure or sordid or corrupt your thought patterns or your actions, then the more difficult it's going to be to raise yourself up. But I have to be careful here because this could be just me putting my belief systems imposing this. But this is my experience through studying tens of thousands of people through their charts. But then, the only people who really want to do their charts are those who are looking for some type of spiritual meaning anyway. So, there's a limited number of people who are on a spiritual path. Most people don't waste their time with astrology. They see it as a fool's game.
Yeah.
That's because they don't know it. They haven't explored it.
Yeah, that's kind of how I thought it was. Roll your eyes at astrology. It's ridiculous, right? Until you start, until you start discovering it and it really changes, or start researching, it really changes your perception. And, when you talked about how the flood happened and we started going to the left side of our brain with, me, and kind of being more black and white thinking, the rise of these kind of religions, very structured, I think that part of our brain wants to have things black and white. We want order. You do this, this is what happens. You do that, this is what happens. You're going to go to hell, you have to follow us. And we're also social primates. We want to be in a group with each other. So we get people together having those black and white thinking, very left brain, kind of like this. You got to fit into these categories in order to achieve this. Like, we have this, you don't kind of idea.
For a long time, Dennis, that did work. You go back 200-300 years. Go back to somewhere like the mid-1700s, the mid-1800s, where there was no technology, the Industrial Revolution hadn't happened. We all worked in the fields 6.5 days a week. And then on the 7th day, we went to church where a priest would look after our spiritual needs for us. And that worked because then we could just work the rest of the time in the fields and we all worked for the benefit of the community and we didn't have to worry about our individuality or our spirituality. But once the Industrial Revolution happened, which obviously led on to computer technology in the long run, the idea of having a priest still looking after our spiritual needs is a little bit outdated. We all have our own relationship with the divine and with divinity. And I don't believe that the idea of the priest still being the shepherd of the flock is still valid. There's still room, of course, for religion and religious offices, but it's not quite the same as it was 100 years ago. Things have moved on.
Oh, yeah, I think so. I definitely would agree with you. As the population became more literate, that helped also when we it stopped being, hey, this one person has all the information. And now another benefit of technology is that, I can talk to you, I can get this message out to a bunch of people, but I can also go on to you. We can be exposed to so much different different types of information out there that having this idea that it's centralized, that spirituality, which is ridiculous to me, that spirituality or any information could be centralized.
Well, really, and perhaps we're ignoring perhaps the single most important factor of the whole thing, and that is that in order for a religion to still be, or a spiritual attitude, or any type of spiritual practice still to be valid in the world today, we have to accept the fact that by the very nature of processing these systems of belief, we are ascribing to a more feminine and receptive way of dealing with the world. It's always been priests, male priests, who have held the power. And it's only in the last 30 years, 20 years, that women have come into the church. In fact, do you know, there's only 2 countries in the world where there are more male astrologers than female.
Wow.
And that those two countries are India and the UK. The need for men to get in touch with their femininity and for women to get in touch with their masculinity is becoming ever stronger, and it is creating some type of greater balance here. So this is something that everyone's going to have to pay attention to. Just in this last year, look at the surge of feminism. Whether, you can argue for or against it, but it's real and it's happening. And who's going to be strong enough to stand up and say this is a bad thing? Not me. I'm fully supportive of it.
I am too. And I think is that kind of why you started referring to astrology as a she? Kind of trying to get into that mindset of tapping into your feminine side?
I suppose that's a possibility, but I realise that astrology has an essence of compassion, empathy, and spirituality about it, and these are not attributes that I associate with masculinity. I associate them more with femininity.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like motherhood, kind of caring, and I agree. Nurturing. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that because at least right now we're seeing. I think that it might have been kind of hidden in the shadows, maybe thanks to my wonderful president, this kind of rise of this kind of toxic masculinity where this kind of brutish, puffed out chest, unable to see any wrong in their life or trying to humble themselves or show compassion, just this double down in this sign of strength and this brute kind of just disregard for anything that they could perceive as quote unquote weakness, which I would disagree that compassion is
you forgot about the 18-foot long tie.
Yes, the 18-foot line. Exactly, but I feel that we I think there's been this so there's been that kind of rise and that kind of masculinity, and I think that because of that there's been this great pushback against that, being like, no, this is wrong. This is not a good way to fight.
I mean, without wishing to sort of pass comment on other countries' political systems, because that's not my place, even though I do it a lot. Just in the last 3 or 4 months, this sudden surge of youth in America against guns.
Yeah.
These people are going to be voting in the next election, and guns are very much a male-stroke-masculine thing. I suggest that anybody the bigger the gun, the more inadequate the male is. So it's going to be really interesting to see how America develops over the next 10 years. And the astrology of America, I mean, some countries we know the exact moment that they were born. For example, I had the exact moment that the state of Israel came into being. I know when America came into being. Some countries like Spain and France, which have been around for thousands of years, we don't know the actual day when they became a unified country, but many countries we do. For example, I know that America came into being at about 5:10 in the afternoon on the 4th of July, 1776. That was the Declaration of Independence. So I know that Britain, the state of the British Isles, the state of England came into operation around midday on the 25th of December 1066, when William the Conqueror was crowned in Westminster Cathedral. Since that time, England's been a unified country and it's never been invaded. So it's possible to work out the horoscopes of countries.
Yeah, I was going to ask if astrology points to those things. If you can look back, because there's astrology records, you can go back and back and back to see. Oh yeah. So and even like you can trace it back just the way the movement of the stars are and everything. It's not like I'm sure that there is plenty of documentation to look at, like people just keeping records. But also, if their records weren't there, you could using math, you could trace those things back.
Indeed.
Okay.
Indeed. And there's plenty of evidence that, let's just use America as an example.
Yes.
The majority of presidents of America have used astrologers, as have the vast majority of kings and queens in Europe, especially Britain. The first presidents of America, Jefferson, Washington, they were astrologers.
Okay.
They knew their astrology. And even latter-day presidents have used astrology regularly. I mean, the stories around Reagan and Nancy Reagan using astrology are common. It's not just them. It's many, many more.
And you, when we first originally spoke, you said that you believe that Donald Trump might even have an astrologist, or potentially, or at least someone could be getting advice from an astrologist, then giving him advice through that person.
Personally, I know that Donald Trump has had his horoscope read in person to him about 25, 30 years ago, and I know that he has always been more than just a little passing interest in it. There are one or two American astrologers who claim to be his personal astrologer, but they're obviously not telling the truth, because anyone who would be his astrologer would not boast about it.
yeah, that's true. A lot of people, or they'd be fired or something. He'd be like, I fired my astrologist. They would like tweet it out or something like that. We'd find out.
In Rome, if the astrologers got it wrong, they were thrown to the lions.
Oof, man, you definitely don't want to get it. So, okay, no, this is, well, first of all, when you say that we can date back looking at these, when countries are born, quote unquote, that we can look at like what was happening in astrology at the time and kind of see how they correlate. Like, what are you looking for? Like, when something happens, are you like, oh, because X planet was here or whatever, like that's why this happened? Like, can you kind of explain that? Because I learned, and I don't know how true this is, but growing up Christian, you know, you hear the birth of Jesus with the star in the sky, and then the wise men were actually supposed to be Zoroastrians, and they were kind of following, you know, the stars and everything. Yeah, the star, exactly. But they were astrologists, and they were kind of seeing maybe this birth of someone who was. Now, I am not going to go into a debate of whether the historical Jesus existed or not, but you know, if someone of great significance comes into power or is born, maybe the astrology could point to that. Potentially.
Well, it's using that example. One of the benefits of being able to trace back using computers is we can find out the positions of planets and stars at any time in the last 25,000 years. And somewhere around the 4th of March, 4 BC, Jupiter and Saturn, the two biggest planets in the sky and the two brightest in the sky, were in the same place, not only in latitude, but also in longitude. And this made the star that they represented 3 times bigger than normal. So it would have been by far the biggest star in the sky over the period of late February to mid-March in 4 BC.
Okay.
Now this is factual.
Got it.
So, you know, that this may or may not be some type of relation to the star that the Magi followed. We don't know.
Supposedly followed. Yeah. But that sounds like it could be there. So when you look back, you're kind of looking for those kinds of unique astrological or unique celestial lining up of planets and stars. When you look in the past at significant events that we know the exact date, because you're right, we know when the Declaration of Independence was signed and all that. Like, so you look back to see what was going on in the skies at that time. Kind of see. Got it. And where do you draw? So where do you draw your information from when you start doing readings? In the sense, so you're pulling it from a lot of sources, from a lot of places.
I'm pulling it from astrological books that have been written over the hundreds and hundreds of years. I'm pulling it from my own observations over 40 years of study. I'm pulling it from a kind of blend of philosophy and symbology, where I recognize certain patterns of behavior in people which correlates to certain patterns in the sky at the moment they were born. And I see it more and more as I get older. part of me wishes I knew what I knew now 40 years ago, but then I wouldn't have been ready to use it. You know, age is a curse.
But
yeah, it's a varied number of sources.
okay, so when you say you look at, so you have to look at the individual then, right? So you have to kind of have, like when you do a reading for someone, I'm gonna put all your information on Twitter, Facebook page, everywhere that I can, so people can do research into you and onto your website and also onto your YouTube channel. But do you usually have a conversation to get a feel of the person's personality and what they're like? Because I'm a Gemini, born June 9th. So does that mean, I'm not sure the exact time, but does that mean everybody kind of born in that time would have like a similar personality to me?
No, not at all. Not at all. And neither does it mean that certain things, I mean, you could pick out 20 people born on that date,
Mm-hmm.
and they'd all have 20 different personalities, and the time scales of their life would be very different. 26 people all born on the same day would have different events happening at different times. But you could actually say about all of them that there would be a few specific times in their lives which they would all get hammered or they would all get blessed at the same time. For example, June the 9th. You say to me June the 9th.
Mm-hmm.
So straight away, just by saying that date, regardless of the age or the time of birth, just by giving me that little bit of information, June the 9th, I know that when you were born, the sun was in Gemini and it was around about 18 degrees of Gemini. And because I know where the outer planets were in the sky in recent years, I can work out, for example, that Pluto in the sky passed opposite your sun around 2002, 2003, and that tells me straight away that that would have been a great time of massive intensity, borderline extremism, obsessive compulsive behavior, crises and trauma, but also breakthrough and transformation, because these are the Plutonic archetypes. And this would happen to everyone born on June the 9th, regardless of what year.
Got it. Okay. So you would say that astrology is, as long as you get the more information that you receive, the better, of course. But you would say that it's pretty accurate. Yes. Okay.
I would, and I would also make it clear that I'm not psychic. I don't even consider myself intuitive. I consider myself very good at pattern recognition. And anyone who says they are psychic, I want proof. And if they're not going to give me proof, then I'm going to custard pie them. Okay? Most people who are psychic are con merchants, in my opinion.
So you would say that that astrology is pretty dang accurate, or you would give it a pretty strong, yeah.
I've got clients who have been coming back every 6 months or every year for over 20 years.
Wow. Okay.
And they're not fools.
Yeah.
You know, I've got bishops, I've got top scientists, politicians, as well as normal Joes and Joannes from the street, both in mundane jobs and in very responsible jobs. I've got a complete cross-section of society on my books, some famous, a lot of them not. And it's such a broad cross-section, but they keep coming back. More than half my clients come back every year.
Wow.
So there must be something to it, because they keep coming back and they're not foolish.
Yeah.
And sometimes I sit here and I wonder, how the hell does this work? I don't get this. And a part of me says, I hope I never find out. Because we need a few mysteries in this world.
I agree.
If it's explainable, we might as well just be robots.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes when I think back to folklores and like kind of fairy tales, I kind of find there's something beautiful about it. It's like almost like the branch of science was imagination. And kind of like, well, now we kind of lose that, where it's like, oh, you hear something in the woods, it's not a fairy or a troll, we can't make up there's no mystery. It's kind of shaving away. So yeah, I agree that I think that mystery in the world is good. And I hope that, and I definitely don't think that we'll ever be able to figure everything out. I just think that it's too far beyond. Now you, I mean, after following you, talking with you, you were absolutely genuine about the things that you believe, that you have beliefs in, or that you know to be true, as you said. You're very genuine. When you give readings, you believe what you're saying. You're being genuine. You're not trying to scam people. But I think that a lot of people can be scammed, or there are people out there that can kind of use it as a scam. Do you have any suggestion to be like, hey, if you start getting involved with an astrologist, if they're kind of doing this, it's you may want to pause. Is there some like markers or red flags that you can think of? Because I'm sure that you run into people on YouTube and stuff that you're just like, whoa, that person is not.
There are one or two astrologers out there who I think are a genuine disgrace to their craft.
Okay.
But I'm obviously not going to name names, obviously. But I also know that these people, they don't last very long.
Okay.
But they burn out within a year, or they get weird illnesses or sudden accidents. And negative things happen to them because they're not doing it for the right reasons. And the single best guide to anyone who's going to any type of astrologer, medium, whatever, is follow your gut instinct. And if it doesn't feel right, then stop.
Yeah.
Every so often, 1% of the people I read for, they go, look, this doesn't work. It's not right. At which point I normally go, okay, let's stop. Let's come back again and try it in a month's time. And if it doesn't work, then I'll give you your money back. And they're happy with that. I'm happy with that. But it's only about 1%.
Yeah.
But yeah, trust your gut instinct. Humans we've been kind of bred out of trusting our gut, trusting our instinct, trusting our intuition. And yet, it's the single best divinatory tool we've got. How many people actually go, something in my water's telling me this is wrong, or my gut instinct's playing out, my hunch is like this, my intuition says this, and yet we tend to dismiss it. We should listen to it more.
And that's your spirit. Like, do you believe in a God, or do you just believe in a spiritual kind of realm?
I have seen too much evidence. Too much concrete, absolutely crystal clear evidence of how the universe, the solar system, works so perfectly that I cannot, even though I want to, I cannot deny the existence of some type of super intelligence. Einstein said it best, that God does not play dice with the universe. There is some type of super intelligent force behind evolution and behind the development of the solar system and the patterns that it produces. However, I don't consider, as soon as someone says this is evidence of God, then that God terminology is normally then described by their beliefs in their particular religion. That's why I call it the upstairs department, which is unconditional in its love. And there is no beliefs attached to it. It is just unconditional love. Because at the end of the day, it sounds very crass and hippie-like to say this, but unconditional love is where it's at. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that's a lot of people talk about that, especially people that have near-death experiences, unconditional love that they feel right before they transition. And you would say that there's no one path. It's everybody's trying to find their own path. There's no right or wrong path necessarily. Well, I guess there's wrong paths, but it's your right path is not. You can't box anyone into anything.
It's like someone said to me when I was very young. He said, "Look, there's one planet of 6 billion different worlds."
Okay, yeah, I like that. I like that idea. I like that idea a lot, actually.
Everyone's own perception. Everyone, you and I could watch exactly the same thing, hear exactly the same story, but when we come to recount our memory of it, we'll recount slightly different versions of it, because we'll see different things and hear different things. So perception is everything. So that's why I say 6 billion worlds, one planet.
Yeah, with perception. I like that perception. That's kind of an idea that I've been kind of tossing around in my head, this idea like, where you have to get away from this good thing happened to me or this bad thing happened to me and just say, this thing happened to me, and kind of make it more of a neutral and kind of like transcend this good, bad, in the struggle that you put yourself in.
You choose to see it as good or bad, then that's up to you. But for every challenge, there's also a gift. And we could say, if I had run across the road in front of that bus, I wouldn't have broken my leg. True. But then by breaking your leg, it's forced you into slowing down for 6 months and reassessing your life path, which you wouldn't have done otherwise. So There's every challenge has got a gift in it somewhere. And I prefer to consider my glass as being half full rather than half empty. But then I'm an optimist.
I like to consider mine half full as well. Now,
yes.
Okay, so coming down to the last question, because I know you're gonna have to be going soon. Is there anything, like I said, I was gonna ask you, is there anything that you would like to let the listeners know from your personal experience, astrology, or maybe just your personal beliefs that you believe that they could adopt into their lives today, pretty easily, relatively easily, and be able to see a change, a positive change? Like I said, the Muslim woman said, smile more. The Buddhist monk said mindfulness, kind of slow down, be more present in the moment and everything. That's kind of what he said. So do you have any suggestions that you would like to give?
When I'm talking to clients and they're going through various types of problems, challenges, traumas or crises, perhaps the single thing I say most of all to all of them is that the single best therapy of all for anyone is dancing.
All right.
Because dancing is a blend of physicality and spirituality.
Okay.
Physical and spiritual. And when you dance, it makes you happy.
Yeah. I don't know if you're very good. Do you have to be good at it? Because I'm not a good dancer, but I can.
No, I'm in my mid-60s, but I still go clubbing.
Oh.
Right? I like the idea, you hit a euphoric trance nightclub at midnight, and there's a trance beat with a bit of violin or piano in the background. And you close your eyes in the pitch black in the middle of the dance floor, and the next thing you know is 4 a.m. and you're still dancing and you're dripping in sweat, but you feel alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
That type of blend of physical and spiritual it gives you some type of link with community, with divinity, and it brings you closer to whatever you perceive God as being.
I love it. I love it a lot. I like it a lot. The last question I have for you, what's your opinion about wishing upon a shooting star? Do you think there's any credence to that?
Make sure you make your wish strong enough that it doesn't land on top of you.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, Steve. Thank you so much for sitting down. This was phenomenal. This is a great conversation.
I enjoyed it, Dennis. I really enjoyed it. And just for your listeners' sake, if they want to watch me on YouTube, I'm at Steve Judd Astrology. My email is steve@stevejudd.com. My website is stevejudd.com. And if you don't need to come to me for an astrological reading, because there's lots of good astrologers out there. But everyone should get their horoscope done at least once in their life. Nothing to lose, lots to gain.